What is Irish pot still whiskey? It's Whiskey Nerd Day, children. And what better whiskey to do it with? Isn't all single malt and all the whiskey that, from Scotland and Ireland that comes in as single malt in America, American single malt, isn't it all distilled in pot stills? Yeah, most of one. Scotland and Ireland, yeah, if it's single malt. And in North America, most of it, if they call themselves single malt, yeah, in a pot still, not all of them. So what makes Irish pot still different than single malt? And for the love of God, I can't get that thing open. This is a question I get asked a lot in Irish whiskey because it gets really confusing for people who aren't super whiskey nerds. If single malt is made in a pot still, then why would you have a separate product in Ireland, single malt, and then pot still Irish whiskey? And the answer is effectively because it's a different process and actually a different mash bill. And it is actually a distinct and unique product that is quintessentially Irish. So we'll go back in time. First, it's history time, children. Gather around, gather around. Oh, it smells good. So there's a rumor that the origin of pot still Irish whiskey is the 1785 malt tax that the English passed on malted barley in Ireland. And what that caused the Irish to do, according to the rumor, is to start using unmalted barley in their grain mash bill to avoid paying taxes on as much barley as they would need to make whiskey. So if you had a pound of, let's say 500 pounds of malted barley, you would swap it. And so it became, 250 pounds of unmalted barley. Now, you need malted barley to help aid in the conversion process during fermentations, mashing and fermentation. But malted barley in there doesn't convert at the same level as malted barley, and so your yields change a little bit, but it also adds this really rich, kind of viscous, oily character to the new make spirit that goes into the barrels. And so the storyline is, we cheated the English by using only half the amount of malted barley we needed to make the whiskey and pay half the taxes as the single malt guys. But if you read your Fiona and O'Connor, and I don't actually remember if this is in the EWA Irish certification, but if you read your one of the great authors of Irish whiskey, Fiona and O'Connor, he talks about the fact that there are recipes for a mix of unmalted barley and malted barley in Irish whiskey a decade plus prior to this tax. And that by the time we hit the early 1800s, it's more than 90% of all distilleries in Ireland are using unmalted barley in their mash bills. And so, did the tax affect it? Yeah, probably. Did it originate it? No, probably not. What it did do was cement an already growing category into a quintessential Irish-style whiskey because it definitely changes the flavor profile. And if you try an Irish single malt next to an Irish pot still, you will find a pretty big difference there. Now, quick break. Talk about Teeling. Teeling is in Dublin, and we got to visit them. Full disclosure, we spent time promoting their products. We love Teeling here at the school. Alex Chasko, the head distiller, is someone that I know in the industry, and I really like him. And so being fair and balanced or in any way like, this is bullshit, it's gonna be, I'm friends with these guys. Now, I review them because I choose to, because I like Teeling, and this is a single pot still cask strength release that we can get here at Total Wine. I know it's in Texas. I don't know if it's at all Total Wines. But it's their classic, my understanding is it's their classic pot still, just cask strength. Now, this bottling was sort of specifically chosen. I'm not sure how many bottles go into it, but they do a 50% malted barley to 50% unmalted barley. They age it, it's triple distilled pot still, obviously, in American, New Oak, bourbon cask, and sherry cask, and then blend it together. And immediately the nose is just densely honeyed pear, shortbread, cookie, and pastry, a really heavy, bready, oily, buttery pastry, like in the direction of croissant. But that fruit, pear, really light, grainy fruit, like what else would be pear and peach? Fruit is strong in this one. I'm looking for what a sherry cask would do, but I'm mostly getting in the nose of this what I think American oak is contributing, which is the higher vanillin and the sweetness. Oh man, yeah. All right, there it is. So this just rolls out in honeyed pear and peach. A hint of apple, but very, very light touch apple pastry. And then it's just thick and oily. Clings to everything. Definitely going to add water to this. It comes in at 55% alcohol. Woo, boy. I chose them hefty this morning. Okay. Officially, the Irish government stipulates that pot still Irish whiskey has to be produced in a pot still, and it has to be at least 30% unmalted barley and at least 30% malted barley, and then the remaining, 40% can be a mixture of other grains in various ways. I mean, that could mean rye or wheat or corn, but it all has to be pot still, just like single malt whiskey. But what that means for Ireland is they have 3 different ways of making whiskey, one of them quintessentially Irish. And if you actually read your history, one of the great things is during Irish history, during the collapse, if you remember a video about the collapse of Irish whiskey almost in the 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they could have just gone all the way down the path of bailing on that and gone straight to grain and blends and budget. But the main producer, Middleton, as well as Bushmills was doing it too. And then as people started making more whiskey, this classic pot still Irish, they held on to it. They kept making whiskey. They kept hoping that, eventually this will come back around. They kept putting it in barrels. And we have them to thank for the fact that we all still get to taste true pot still Irish whiskey. You will find that a lot of Irish new craft guys are making malt, single malt. And I don't know why they've chosen that versus pot still. It could just be that's what they prefer. I do know that the yields go up a little on pure malted barley versus a mixture. But I love when the smaller guys who are growing, because they should, like Teeling, and small is relative, are still doing pot still Irish whiskey because it's beautiful. It's what made me fall in love with Irish whiskey truly. Now, it used to be called pure pot still or Irish style pot still whiskey or Irish pot still whiskey. And then pure pot still, there was a problem with that with the U.S. trade organizations. They didn't like the word pure. And so it got switched to single pot still. And single, as you know, in single malt just means one distillery. But that's a pretty recent change. So one distillery, pot still Irish whiskey. So unmalted barley. So if you see pot still on the front, hey, unmalted barley is in that mash bill most likely. If it's from Ireland, it's for sure because it's legal. But here's what's kind of cool. Remember my video earlier about unique selling propositions? If it's a really cool, unique process and it's valuable and it creates something cool, you can guarantee that other people are going to start doing it. And sure enough, there's at least 2 that I know of. I'm sure there's more doing pot still Irish style whiskey, not in Ireland. One being in Denver with Talnua, doing an unmalted barley, malted barley Irish style pot still whiskey. And there's one in Tasmania called Transportation Whiskey, I think. I've never tried it, but I read about it. And I think we're going to see more of that with craft distillers as this category story starts to grow. Ooh, Irish style. Ooh, Irish style. Especially anyone who likes to take their roots from Ireland. And in America, we all like to believe we're actually English or actually Irish or actually German instead of mutts, like we know we are, instead of just, American. But I think this is going to be a growing category, and I personally am excited by that. I'm really glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed.